Hello, greetings from my couch here in Tegama. Okay, it's day 33 of our confinement here in northern Spain. Today I'm going to share a picture from the back balcony. We have two, both are small, different views, fair bit of green. The back one has closer buildings and you can see the mountains in the background. Okay, and so as far as the virus and the crisis, seems to me like the political tension, the economic tension is building and becoming very, very serious in many countries. The country here as well as in many where you are. And so things are very unpredictable and we need to maintain our focus and pray for leadership, the leadership and also our own lives, that we would be focused on the Lord in this time and be living as we should. This is the 28th devotional in this series that I never had any dream of doing 5 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago. But here we are, and I don't have many more characters to go, really. I don't think so. So thinking of what to do after this, and one thing that's come to mind is a series on prophecy. Not so much the fulfillment of prophecy in the future as in Revelation, the Revelation and so forth, but the phenomenon, the amazing thing that is biblical prophecy from God. It's just an incredible study. And I may do that. If you want to weigh in on that idea, please do so. Okay, well, let's read out of 1 Kings 19, and I'm looking today at Elijah for the second time, but this time Elijah at the cave. And let's read in 1 Kings 19, verse 3. Jezebel has just sent him the threat of taking his life. And when he saw that, Elijah, he arose and went for his life, and came to Beersheba, which belongeth to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a juniper tree. And he requested for himself that he might die, and said, It is enough. Now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am not better than my fathers. This has been a fiasco. Sort of what he said. Verse 8, And he arose, and did eat and drink, and went in the strength of that meat 40 days and 40 nights unto Horeb, the mount of God. And he came thither unto a cave, and lodged there. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said unto him, What doest thou here, Elijah? So that's where Elijah is, down in a cave. Let's talk over some facts about his life and where he is right now. First of all, he has recently seen the power and glory of God as few men in history. I mean, this guy has seen up close and personal God's power working on his behalf. He prayed and a 3.5-year drought began. No rain. You talk about an economic issue like worse than what we're having now? Probably so. God had already on 2 occasions miraculously provided food for him. Brooke Cherith, the widow up north, he had prayed and fire came down from heaven on those altars. And later on in his life, he's going to pray down fire again on several occasions. However, the results of the Mount Carmel contest, if we want to call it that, were not what he expected. And Jezebel sent him that threat, and it all just came together as the perfect storm, and he booked it out of there and took off for the south. So he makes this trip, and I'm going to divide the trip into 2 parts. First of all, he takes off for Beersheba. Beersheba is 100 miles south of where he was, all the way through Israel, down into Judah, and it's the southernmost inhabited place in Judah. I'm going to put up a few pictures. First of all, there's of the ruins archaeological site, and then just some of the view that's out there in that area. You can tell it's pretty desolate, pretty desert. And so there he leaves his servant, and he goes one day into the desert. And apparently doesn't take anything. He's going out to die. He finds a broom tree, a juniper tree. These are small trees, usually about 10 feet tall. They have little leaves and they smell good and offer a little bit of shade, and he sleeps there. There's a picture of one there, I think, on the screen. And then an angel shows up, gives him cake and water. So he eats, and he tells the angel, I have been faithful. Now kill me, because this just hasn't turned out right. And so he joins others like Job and Moses and Jeremiah, to name a few, who just wanted the Lord to end it all for them. He was so depressed. He was so disappointed. He just wanted to die. Maybe you have been in that situation at some point in your life where you just wanted to give it up. Well, that was Elijah. The angel feeds him again and tells him to travel. He's going to take a trip. Wow, what a trip. What a trip. My goodness. Okay, so we get to the second part of his trip. First part is getting to Beersheba. Second part, he goes out and he travels for 40 days and 40 nights. My goodness. My son Mark is preparing a race called Bigfoot with his friend in August, if it's not canceled. And that's going to be 200 miles. Okay. And that's about what this is, only this is in the desert and a different situation. But this race they're doing is brutal. It's one of the toughest races in the world of that kind. And so, but that's what he does. He goes down through the desert to Horeb. And anyway, at least probably where the site is. And so he travels for 40 days and 40 nights. He says, I have been faithful, but your people, Israel, what a disaster, and I'm all alone. Well, he gets to the cave, and God gets his attention using a mountain-shaking wind and an earthquake and a fire. And then he speaks to him in that still, small voice. And among other things, he tells him there's going to be 3 men. You're going to anoint 3 men. Beginning with Elisha, and these 3 men are going to finish the job. They are going to wipe out Baal worship from Israel for good, 100%. Okay, so those are some of the facts. Now, some observations about the story that we've probably all thought of before, but they're good to remind us of, I'm sure. The still small voice teaches us that God is not nearly as much about noise and grandeur and bombastic events than we are. At least not in this earth. Now, I think in heaven there'll be some spectacular things, but in this earth many times his work is done small, quiet, behind the scenes, and I think we see that even in examples like this one. But then there's the concept or the idea of expectations. Obviously, Elijah had some very different expectations than what happened. And we tend to do that too. High and unrealistic expectations will lead to disappointment, which can then lead to discouragement, and finally to depression, if we don't take control of the situation. Now, there is a way to bring the process to a halt by faith, but it's a pretty focused faith that is needed to make sure that doesn't run its course and land us in full-fledged depression, where we just want to give up completely. Huge disappointments warp our focus, and they steal from us something important, something very important. And that's what disappointments do. They steal common sense. They steal our common sense. In this particular situation, you can see that the common sense issue here was the food. He didn't even go out with food. He didn't care. And the angel brought him the food. And even in just that one area, people respond differently. And when we lose our common sense, sometimes these disappointments come to us and people stop eating completely, like Elijah was going to do. Others go the opposite direction and they start eating, and they eat too much. And so we see this reaction, these extremes, this lack of common sense. And so we have to be careful with that, because disappointments will start that process. Another thing we learn is God will raise up others in our place when and if He chooses to. And then again, we are never as alone as we think. Now, we might be all by ourselves and deal with that issue, but we're never the only ones being faithful to God. There are always 7,000 somewhere who are faithful to God. He makes sure of that. And so, for a final observation, I was going to grab my Bible, I'm used to that, but I'm going to read it off of the screen. Matthew 11:28 says, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." And I highlighted those two pronouns. Come unto me, I will give you rest. The solution to disappointment, discouragement, depression is one. Capital O. One. It is God. It is Him personally. His presence. That is the solution to our disappointments, discouragements, and depressions. We always and only need the Lord. And if that doesn't mean anything to you, something is terribly wrong with your relationship with God. If that doesn't mean, even theoretically, anything to you. God is our only main need. And when we are with Him, we are good. We are fine. And so may God remind us of that. This is why the story is here. One of the greatest men, one of the greatest prophets. And how susceptible and vulnerable he was, well, how much more are we? May God help us to seek for Him in these times of confinement, of special agenda, special schedule. May we honor Him that way. God bless you. See you next time.